panel discussion of the 3-day workshop. This panel discussion is going to be moderated by Shri P S Vijayshankar, all of us know him as Viju. So it came out of some work which Vijayshankar, Meenesh Shah and others have been working on for quite some time. So the Tribal Development Report is a very nice document. It's, the nice news is that it's now come out in a South Asian edition so that it is easy for many of us to purchase. So it's almost like saying apna time aayega, hamara farming futures book also will end up like this. Yeah, so people like Maya and others have contributed to this report. So
I haven't contributed.
You have?
Yes, the reviewer.
I was a commentator on one of the chapters.
Oh, great. Sure. So what we're going to have is, so let me first invite Vijayshankar and our panelists for today's discussion. So we have Vijayshankar, we have Asmita Kabra from the Ambedkar University in Delhi, Maya Ratnam from Ahmedabad University. Pramatesh Ambasta was supposed to join us, but unfortunately fell ill. But Pramil Gupta has kindly agreed to join us as well. Pramil, aye. Yeah, so you have mics? Yeah. So Viju, without any further ado, over to you.
First panel discussion today. So what we thought was that since morning we've been hearing a lot of papers on sustainability and sustainable transitions and all kinds of things, and you will continue to hear this in the next 2 days as well. So we thought in this panel what we could do, that we could take a step back and think a little bit on the notion of sustainability itself. What does sustainability mean? It means many things to many people. It's like scaling up. When you say you want to So sustainability is something like what we talk about scaling up.
Closer to your this thing. Yeah, that should go.
So it's like talking about scaling up. We just had a brief discussion in the session I was there on scaling up. Everybody wants to scale up, but what to scale up, how to scale up, people's ideas differ. So similarly with sustainability. And the context is that book that Shampoo just now showed you, which some of us working along with Bharat Bhushan Foundation, IRMA in Delhi, we together put together this book called Tribal Development Report. It's first of its kind report talking about tribals and the kind of issues they are facing. And the report is in 2 volumes. First volume is about, it's on livelihood, broadly defined as livelihood, agriculture and other employment, other issues. And second volume is largely on human development and...
You stand up and talk, yeah.
This is not...
I'll increase the volume here. Maybe
Yeah, I'll come there. But what about...
Yes, Viju.
I'll come there. The Tribal Development Report, which was prepared on behalf of Bharat Rural Livelihood Foundation and edited by Dr. Meenesh Shah and myself, that touches upon some of the issues of tribal areas that we got together a set of authors to write on different aspects. It's in 2 volumes. First volume is on livelihoods and second volume is broadly on human development. It covers health education and some parts of art and culture as well of tribal areas. So that's the context that we are talking about. So when you talk about sustainability or managing sustainable transitions, I think we should need to give it an area specificity also. So in this panel, we thought we'd largely talk about Central India. Central India is where I worked for the last 30 years, and my fellow panelists, Pramil lives in Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh. Other 2 persons have worked in Madhya Pradesh in different parts. So we'll be largely talking about Central India, which is Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. If you geography-wise, if you look a little bit of probably Jharkhand, a little bit of Orissa. It's a large geography where tribal population is concentrated in India. Around 80% of the tribal population in the country is in this Central Indian region. So when you talk about Central India, there are a few specific things that one has to remember. It's a highly deprived region in terms of human poverty, in terms of human development indicators, in terms of migration. This area always comes up as one of the what should say worst performing kind of region among other regions in the country. So it's a highly deprived region, and therefore, if you talk about the development or any change happening in that area, you have to talk about public investment. Substantial public investment has to flow. That is a kind of axiom or the assumption that we started this work with, which we have been working on for the last so many years on this concept. But while asking for more public investment, it's also true that a lot of investments have gone in. A lot of policies have also been formed in this particular region, which also mobilize a lot of investments, which are actually pushing the area into unsustainable channels. For example, if you talk about agriculture, on the western part of Madhya Pradesh, soybean has become a big crop, and it's almost like a monocrop there. Almost, it's actually a monocrop there, followed by wheat. So that cycle has come up there. Forests also have gone up. Venkat knows that very well. The forest degradation has happened in significant measure. And so on and so forth. Soils have been neglected, rivers, groundwater system, the groundwater levels have fallen. A lot of evidence is there that wrong policies and wrong investments have pushed this area in certain directions. So when you talk about sustainability, it's important to know about that also, what are the things that have pushed it into. And thirdly, if you talk in terms of government policy as signaling. So what is the signal that is coming from the government policies? Signals broadly of two in nature. One is the huge public procurement which the government is doing right now. Which was not in the procurement geography of India till around 2008. So 2008 onwards, Madhya Pradesh started decentralized procurement of wheat. Now that has become so huge that Madhya Pradesh is the top number, even it crossed even Punjab right now, the largest contributor to the central pool of public procurement in terms of wheat. And paddy is also happening. A lot of
Thank you to the organizers for inviting me and also for a very stimulating day of discussions, though I must admit to feeling a very major sense of disconnect in terms of understanding the discourse around managing sustainability transitions and trying to connect it to the villages that I know and work with. So, in keeping with the task set out by Vijayshankar ji, I think the first thing I want to sort of say in my allotted 10 minutes is that sustainability is one of the keywords of our time, and I mean keyword in a very specific way. It's one of those words that different people invest with different meanings. And one would be challenged to find anyone working on anything in rural India today which is not done in the name of sustainability, right? And in that sense, using the very interesting term that Gilbert Rist uses, sustainability is not just a buzzword but also a fuzzword. And if we want to have meaningful dialogues around sustainability, then we need to kind of define or deliberate or debate what exactly we mean by sustainability. Right from nature-based farming to carbon trading to tree plantation, indiscriminate tree plantation, to large-scale land acquisition or land grabbing for solar power plants, to fortress conservation, which is what I kind of work with. All of these are initiatives in the name of some variant of sustainability, and therefore the buzzword or the fuzz around the buzzword needs to be discussed and debated quite a lot. And different variants of sustainability, we need to come out and say what we mean by our version. So I'll talk about my version, which is and when I think about sustainability for the Central Indian farm forest frontier, I'm speaking, I was born in Delhi, I grew up in Delhi, I just happened to have spent many years, more than 2 decades, in one little nook of Madhya Pradesh, which is northern MP and Chambal. And so I will speak from the positionality of an outsider who's sort of become familiar with one landscape and what does sustainability kind of mean, and managing sustainable transitions. And I'm talking not from the point of view of agriculture but rural in general, and the reason I'm doing that is because in my little nook of Madhya Pradesh, Central India, this was a region that never was predominantly agricultural. People have always had a bricolage or a portfolio of livelihoods where farming, forest produce collection, livestock rearing were in a sort of dynamic mix which changes across villages as well as across seasons as well as across years. So it's an opportunistic and a very creative use of resources, and the ability to switch between different livelihoods was key to how people sustained themselves. And because these were relatively sort of unconnected to the urban areas landscapes, so sustainability had a lot to do with also making sure that the natural resource base on which your livelihoods depend, whether it's the grasslands, the forests and the farms, they continue not to be degraded. They are maintained and sort of managed well because livelihoods depend on them, but also life worlds are constructed around these kind of landscapes. Today's sort of livelihood is also a bricolage. It's also a portfolio-based livelihood, mainly because this is the Central Indian dryland region, and land is not productive enough. The rainfall is not enough to sustain, to produce enough food to meet even food nutritional needs for an entire year. So people follow a mix of livelihoods today also, but because a certain variant of sustainability through fortress conservation, the enclosure of more and more land for biodiversity conservation is pushing people off of their land. Therefore, today's portfolio of livelihoods has much more of wage labor and various local but also non-local, extra-local, non-farm livelihoods, as well as farm wage labor. So people practice multiplicity of livelihoods, and when we think about how sustainable transitions in these areas have to happen, then this fact of life, this reality that people don't just turn out to be farmers. There are many more things. Within a household, you can have a farmer, a small shop owner, somebody who's a farmer in one season but a wage worker in another season. These kind of diversities exist. And also what one of the previous speakers in the previous session brought out, which is that the rural-urban divide is very, very blurred. So when we are talking about sustainability transitions, in a lot of discussions since this morning, we're talking about farmers as though they're only farmers, people working in places as though they don't move all the time, and these are just not facts anymore. There is this very blurred rural-urban boundary, and that, of course, also another session where a very interesting presentation was about how that shapes aspirations and the aging farmer as a phenomenon, where younger people don't want to farm and their parents don't want them to farm, and land is in fact being mortgaged or sold so that other livelihoods can be explored for their children. So when we think about even agrarian transition, it has to be thought of in this context, and also that the people who are farming may not be the landowners, because there is a bewildering variety of agrarian contracts through which people are working, whether it's sharecropping, renting, etc. So when you want to do sustainability transition planning even for agriculture, who do you talk to? Who has what rights? Because people have bundles of rights, and these bundles are divided across a range of factors. So that's the other sort of reality that we have to work with. And therefore, when we, and lastly, something that we don't really talk about much, except I think in this our keynote speaker for today brought this out beautifully, that the societies that we are talking about are collective action in those societies is not something that, we seem to have some imagination, and I'm essentializing here, while kind of calling out essentializing. But we seem to have an imagination that collective action is easy to bring about, but these are extremely caste class divided societies with very deep running conflicts, and the sort of the other is not just the urban dweller, the globalizer, the multinational. The other is sometimes your neighbor. And so apart from the sort of large structural exclusions, there are also very intimate everyday exclusions that shape the everyday life of the Central Indian farm forest frontier in particular. And it is in this context that when we look at how, at least when I see how people in the landscape that I am familiar with are constructing their livelihoods, you find that people are trying to sort of make a living by doing all kinds of things which don't just involve collective action, coming together, fighting the other. We tend to glorify that kind of collective action over other kinds of collective action, but there's a whole lot of everyday politics which includes collaboration, which includes letting go sometimes even though injustice is being done, but also internalizing some of the things that as people sitting here, we would think, this is not the right way to go, but aspirations are shaped by contemporary realities and not just, by what ought to be in some sort of very distant and ideal form. Do I have a couple of minutes more? Okay, just trying to wrap up then. So when we are thinking about managing sustainable transitions in the face of this reality, ideally, one could think of, a sort of more mainstream government corporate imagination of linking our farmers with agribusinesses and, doubling their incomes and bringing technology, etc. Or we could think of the more, and again, there's a continuum of views, and I'm, creating a binary almost. And then there is a back to the Jal Jangal Zameen kind of imagination of what a sustainable transition is going to be like. But what is it that people want? At least the people that I know, and one of the things that I've done over the last 2 decades is to run a school for the children that were displaced from the Kuno, then Wildlife Sanctuary, now National Park. And the batches of students who have come out and passed out of 12th standard, they come up with the most bewildering things they want to do. So 3 kids just said, we want to join Yusuf Pathan's Cricket Academy in Jaipur. There's another girl who wants to, she says, Didi, मैं इतना तेज भागना चाहती हूँ कि मुझे कोई पकड़ ही ना पाए. Now, I don't know what livelihood trajectory she's talking about, and then she said, also, I want to dance. So there's a real sort of an amazing variety of things people want to do in these landscapes, which are not necessarily land-based. And so when we think about the sustainable village of our imagination, it needs to be built on the real villages that we engage with. And that village for me requires us to all collectively sit down and rethink what is our imagination of the sustainable rural. Why is it only just, farming? And what is it about? I think we need to rethink about ourselves. Why is it that when we think of a sustainable rural, we end up with just FPOs and farming, but not other things? And so, for me, I would want a village of my imagination where people have, like when you go out somewhere, you would have, going from one village to another for tourism. They make very nice food and you want to go to that village and have that food. People having disposable incomes where they could do these things. So, but this is not, somewhere we are kind of incarcerated by our own imagination of a land and natural base, resource based and collective resurgence, which is going to make sustainability possible. I'm sure that is important in certain landscapes, but I'm sure that is not the only way to reimagine sustainable transitions, especially in the Adivasi farm forest frontier that I'm familiar with. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Vijayshankar ji, for inviting me to be in this panel. I feel genuinely, vastly underqualified, knowledgeable crowd, which has so much expertise in the domain of sort of agrarian futures and imagining, understanding agrarian presence and imagining agrarian futures. I am a sociologist, anthropologist by training. So what I think I will do is, it has felt really quite a new and strange field of discourse, really. So what I try and do is offer maybe 3 concepts from within the field, the discipline of anthropology, broadly speaking, that came to me when I was listening to all the presentations today, in the hope that this can, help to perhaps pry open some of the words and ideas and policy prescriptions and observations that we've seen through the course of the day. So these 3 kind of tools are, one is, Asmita has already spoken a little bit about it, is this idea of keywords, which the cultural theorist Raymond Williams talks about. One is this notion of a social fact, and what is a social fact. And the third is again a term which is perhaps familiar to many of you. It's called thick description, which is also a term which people use for doing ethnography or anthropology. So why first keywords? So because I've heard so many kinds of keywords today, right? So I tried to write some of them, but eventually I lost track. There's sustainability itself is a kind of keyword. There's agroecology, socio-technical systems, knowledge systems. There is aspirations, pathways. There is unlocking, which I find fascinating. And actually, at some point, I stopped because I realized that this was really a language game to which I'm really quite an outsider. So. But what the reason to think with the term keyword might be that these terms are not just kind of neutral terms, right? But they stand in some relationship or some kind of asymmetry to each other and are capable of producing or disabling various kinds of action in the world. So what was I thinking when I was thinking keywords? So if we So that's a kind of imagination of keywords which might, maybe open up some of these terms which have recurred in the course of today. The other term is a social fact, right? So this is attributed to the sociologist Emil Durkheim. Now, so how is something like a social fact relevant to what we've been talking about today, right? When does migration become a social fact? When does, say, farmers' suicides become a social fact? So I, somewhat like Asmita, I have done fieldwork in a small region of eastern Madhya Pradesh where others have worked as well. And in the years that I've been going there, perhaps when I started fieldwork, migration was something that people did. But in the course of over 15 years, migration has become a social fact, which is that people, a large number of people do it. It's considered something which is natural and almost endemic to the area, right? So there are push factors, pull factors, and all of that. But it's become a kind of thing. Now it's not enough to say that forest livelihoods have declined, non-farm employment have gone. So it's not enough to explain social facts in terms of just correlative factors, right? So similarly, if we think of, say, keywords, if you think pathways, for instance, is another thing, something came up, right? In when you're imagining a future for yourself, what is a pathway? So moving out of the rural, setting up a, going to Bangalore to seek work in the construction sector, trying to enter, say, small business or small trade. These might be, say, pathways out of a perceived sense of stagnation or, in the agrarian sector. But a suicide is also a pathway. So again, only to say that there were a lot of terms which came up, but they're used as though they mean the same in different contexts, but they don't. They can have sort of very different meanings. And the third term that I thought came to me when I was listening to a lot of the presentations, because the accounts of what is going on in different places was so solid and so detailed, was this thing of, say, thick description. Now, there was this fascinating paper on digitization and digital technology in agriculture. And it was a fantastic sort of recapitulation of all the terms that are kind of used in the technological imaginary of, the problems that data gathering and data assimilation can really solve. And there is assetization, and there is scaling, and then there is some, so, but once again, now that you have the description, it has to serve as a kind of a springboard to, I think Professor Banerjee and others also mentioned, to some kind of critical analysis of these terms, which are not just, neutral, right? So, I'm constantly, yes. So I think I have actually very little to say. This was my only offering, that I thought that if we think like this, perhaps we can open up the sustainability conversation a little bit, which is, and the other thing, and I think I don't have really time to get into some thoughts I have on Central India and the question of Adivasi farmers in Central India. But the other strong thing that came out for me when I was hearing the presentations is this sense of an encounter of knowledge systems, and between some sort of localized, indigenous, farmers' worlds and modes of understanding, and words that are described as modernization or some sort of dominant and external form of knowledge that is seen as the agent of change. And while this has been very rightly problematized in many of the presentations, I do feel that this needs a little more also troubling. This binary also needs, because our imagination of farmers or agrarians, the rural, the farmers as, not as fundamentally as agents of modernity, not as agents of capable of sculpting on a national modernity, a modern self, we shouldn't reproduce that imagination in our language. So this was what I got from all the presentations that I heard today. So I would just like to leave you with these 3 terms.
Shankarji, for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences related to managing sustainable transition in Central India. Friends, I have working experience in Central India, especially Southern Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh and Bastar region, about 25 years experience. I want to share with you one of the experience from one of landscape where I closely see how agriculture cropping system changed from last around 40-50 years based on a kind of, I will also pick the word of Mr. Apporva Oza. Morning he was told that we need economic evidence-based model for transition. So I seen while discussing and during my work in Central India, around 25 years above, around 40 years above was in Gadawala, Narsingpur, Hoshangabad, known for the pulse growing area. And in Gadawala, one of the block in Bankhedi was very famous on tur dal. And lot of the processors around the tur dal in this part, about 12 processor was that time exist around 40 years back. And around 30 years back, the soybean came and farmer got knowledge, and even our agriculture extension promoted the soybean crop around 40-30 years back. And farmers shifted from pulses to soybean. And then what happened to this industry? These all started running with the underutilized capacity, right? And slowly I seen in front of me that many these pulses mill in Bankhedi and Gadawala closed, and soybean processor came. Big company came because lot of soybean opportunity, because farmer seen this as a magical cash crop which even changed the whole livelihood pattern in a household, because they got lot of money, cash from the soybean. Earlier, along with the pulses, they were doing mixed cropping, and which were more resilient and giving lot of across the year opportunity with sustaining the local ecosystem. Then with the soybean, because they immediately seen the cash in hand, and Madhya Pradesh still is the largest soya producing state from the Central India. So, and this is a kharif crop and around 110 to 20 days, and required intercultivations, monocropping culture. Even our tribal farmers was shifted from the mixed cropping, which was including pulses and oilseed, to the soybean crop. Because they learn from our again that we need a very good extension system. Well, the extension system, because NSSO also says that around 10 to 12% only with the institutional extension system our farmers learn and adopt practices. But largely farmers adopt from the large farmers or from the input shopkeepers who is available, exist local to sell the chemical inputs. So what happened? The farmers shifted with the soybean again from last around 10 years in area where I work. The soybean crop also failed around continuous around 4 or 5 years due to yellow mosaic and many because continuously they were cultivating soya crop, so the soil had deterioration happened drastically, and which soil were coming from the mixed cropping was very rich, and they started continuous soil crop around 15 years, and soil health was almost the organic carbon around gone up to the 70 to 60%. So what happened? The soybean crop then shifted with the paddy, soya area. Recently, our farmers, even the lot of our from the government agriculture extension system and our research institution promoted basmati rice variety. So if you go to Hoshangabad now, you will see the area, hardly you will see the 10 to 20% farmers only cultivating the soya. Even the Gadawara area from the Narsingpur, Swanuk Bhai is sitting in front of me, so he knows more this all data. So I am the practitioner to see, but this all knowledge I have. So what, and this is this again the bottom thirsty crop. This required a lot of water. This paddy, and again they chosen for more profit the basmati crop. Basmati crop, basmati rice is not from the Madhya Pradesh originally, right? But this is promoted from the our extension center. What then happened? Lot of again the input cost increased drastically, and the whole the returns from in morning session also over some of the experts were sharing on this. Now what happened is 5-6 years back, one more crop came, summer moon, in this area landscape, and government published recently one article with the due to the heavy pressure from the media and from our civil society sector even, that the moong area, summer moong area, increased drastically in central India from around 80,000 hectare to around 6 lakh hectare. And they use 5 times pesticides for this short duration of crops. So in this what I am saying, this is the context, what we from as a practitioner see this economic evidence-based model is how motivating to our farmer in the central India, and this is the context, right? So what we do, because I was working with NGOs, so we were promoting campaign farmer-led, farmer-to-farmer extension system, developing local leaders, and trying to build a perspective to local cadre. Why this all diversity, soil, water is important for understanding. Understanding is important for our each and every farming household, and this is a responsibility of our champion, our local leaders. मैं बताऊं, मुझे उतना दुख हुआ जब मैं एक ट्राइबल रिमोट विलेज में होशंगाबाद के विजिट कर रहा था, तो वहां पर मैंने देखा कि बैल से मूंग की दावनी हो रही थी। वो जो पुराने समय में जो आंगन में वो अपने बैल से वो दावनी करते हैं। तो मैंने कहा कि आपके गांव में तो अधिकतर लोग केमिकल उपयोग करते हैं, केमिकल मूंग करते हैं, वो हमारा प्राकृतिक खेती का किसान है। तो हमारी मेरे साथी मुझे उसके घर पर लेके गए थे। तो मैंने कहा आप क्यों नहीं वो केमिकल वाला की जगह ये प्राकृतिक खेती क्यों करते हो? तो बोला ये साहब, ये बैल देख रहे हैं ना आप, ये इसको खा रहा है ना, मूंग को जो ये दौनी कर रहा है, तो केमिकल वाला जो मूंग हो रहा है ना, उसमें मुंह नहीं मारता, ऊपर उठा के चलता है। ठीक है, तो मैं उस समय टाइम मुझे इतना उसके ऊपर मैंने आर्टिकल भी लिखा, और मुझे मतलब इतना दुख हुआ कि वो किसान हमारा समझ रहा है कि वो उसका बैल भी नहीं खाता और वो प्राकृतिक खेती का मूंग वो खुद खाता है। और सेंट्रली हमारे इंडिया में मूंग को लेकर मतलब कुछ पार्ट जो लैंडस्केप की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, आई एम नॉट कंपेयरिंग ऑल द सेंट्रल इंडिया, राइट? तो वहां पर बाजार प्रमोट कर रहा है, market is promoting chemicals, heavy chemicals, and they are not worried at all about the consumer, what consumer going to be adopt. So why for me is a way forward is to understand how we can develop a local leader. Local leader are what I feel is the only solution for this all sustainable transition. Thank you very much.
Asmita and Maya for your observations. Broadly what we are trying to say is that we need to go beyond behind and beyond the notion of sustainability and understand what it is. So now this house is open for questions, and we'll take a few questions and all of you can respond. Okay.
On this word sustainability being loosely used and sometimes even seductive. Look, are we talking about the agency of the institution, sustainability, or are we talking about Mother Nature indeed sustainability? That is absolutely unclear to me. If it is agency institutions, what is the price of failure? Nothing. Let IRMAs and IITs and cash. The world will go on. So I am worried about the agency. So therefore, unless we distinguish between the instrument which is dominating our conversation, rather than the intrinsic, which is our goalpost, we will continue to push our Western interests in all these manners.
From a Central India perspective, in economics you talk about structural transformations of the economy, and you've had several economists from India who described that India's structural transformation from being an agrarian economy to be able to uplift its people and improve its per capita income, we have to transition people out of agriculture. My question is, what is your take on this from your experiences in Central India? Is agriculture at the scale and the population that we're supporting, which is about, the cropping area is what, 147 million hectares today, is that sustainable to be able to support the population? What a lot of economists have also studied and said is that even if we are undergoing a structural transformation, much of the people who step out of agriculture are falling into the trap of an informal economy and not necessarily a formal economy, which means distress migration, which means a lower standard of living for the people. Can agriculture and potentially the transition that we're talking about will be able to support a minimum standard of living and improve the quality of life overall? Is what I'm mentioning.
Last statement, which said that for sustainability you require local leaders, etc. I think I completely disagree with that statement. If we had local leaders who were good, then why don't we have half a dozen livre bazaars or riding out set things? We don't. In fact, the next village doesn't do it. Okay. Sustainability to me, and I won't get into very deep definitions right now, is the amount of throughput of energy and material that goes in through the economy. What is that level? And that has not been defined as yet today, despite Grove Brundtland's great statements more than 25 years back. So I ask this panel two questions. Do we try to move towards trying to quantify sustainability, without which we are not going to move towards sustainability, because Grove Brundtland defined sustainability very beautifully, but in fact we've gone in the reverse direction. Okay? Do we move towards that? If so, then what is that quantity of energy particularly per capita that we should be using to be sustainable? This is number one. Number two, there seems to be an underlying assumption through the day that I've been listening to very quietly, that agriculture in fact can become sustainable. It cannot. In fact, if you look at the history of agriculture, in the last 8,000 years, something like about 20 million square kilometers of forest have been wiped out. And to do that, the amount of energy that was used per year was the equivalent of 20,000 Hiroshima-sized atomic weapons. This land use change, in fact, happened because agriculture came into existence. And right, if you look at the history of agriculture itself, right from the beginning, in fact, agriculture has been an unsustainable activity. Now the point is at what level do we say, all right, Now this is how much we want to take from nature and we will live with it. I think this is the central question in the title of this conference itself. Transition, of course, is another story. My own take is it's going to be very chaotic. How chaotic, I think we need to discuss over the next 2 weeks.
About like looking beyond.
Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Shyamkrishnan representing Well Labs at Kumar. We discussed about looking beyond land while we talk about aspirations and interventions. But like, is there an inherent danger in that? Like, I'm just asking across, like, inherent danger given the fact that, given the context that there are companies and people like looking for land grabbing, solar companies around the corner, who is like trying to, or even any other companies trying to consolidate the small land holdings. And like, is the land which is beyond having an economic value, which is having cultural and social values, do we need to consider land, like even in terms of livelihood, as an important aspect while we designing the intervention? Because like somebody told in one of the sessions, like aspirations also constrained by their resources and their like what is available to them. Like currently land is not maybe attractive, but is it the way we handle the land is that to be changed rather than looking beyond the land or out of the land?
Yeah, I'm Ankit Kumar, working with a small farm income team at Aga. My question is about, as Asmita ma'am has pointed out earlier, that what people want and how we approach. So my question is that what sort of approach we should follow to understand what farmers want exactly, and in that, then understanding what different CSOs are working on, other academia is working, different research scholars working. So is it the sustainability, is an understanding about what people from academia or the being expert in different institutions, what they understood or what farmer understood about the sustainability as an idea. So how to approach farmers to know that what really they want in terms of sustainability or what sustainable approach can help them. As Pramil sir has mentioned that farmers shifted from moong to soybean. So was that kind of gainful decision for the farmer or it's something loss for other society? So because in larger way, if farmer adopted something to just understand their benefit, तो वो benefit क्या हम देख पाते हैं या हम चाहते हैं कि it is something critical what farmer is doing, whether it's a small farmer or large farmer. So how to approach that something is beneficial for farmer and it is going to help that larger community. So how to approach? I'm talking about more methods. Thank you.
What I mentioned is this in the West actually there is a land sparing, land sharing conversation that's been going on, right? And where the conversation diverges quickly into say that we will have to use intensification and use chemicals so that we increase, and that's where we do sustainability. So we see how much of this becomes a quicksand in this kind of a conversation. So I wonder how you are looking at it. I mean, in this panel we heard also a lot about some of the land sparing, sharing dilemmas and conflicts that are emerging. I'm wondering if there is a sort of a native way of breaking that duality or that conflict in how you see it.
I am from Samaj Sustainable Alternatives. We work with pastoralists specifically on natural fibers, not directly related to the agri, but it is very much related to agri still. And that is what my question was throughout the day when I've been hearing, and especially when I heard Asmita, the point that you made that people never dependent on one specific livelihood. The moment one thing overpowers the rest, the whole challenge of sustainability starts boiling down. That's my understanding of working with the farmers or artisans or pastoralists as well. It's the same family which is practicing all three. We work in Rajasthan with Urmul ecosystem, and the question was more taking forward the other question. Whose transition are we talking about? Because when we start working on something with the communities, okay, initially it's okay, the organic farming or the natural farming, we have to improve the quality, we have to improve the scale. the fiber is not selling, the pastoralist is struggling, okay, we have to work on that front. And then suddenly the question, another wall, the moment you open one door, you hit another wall, is the market is just not ready and nobody's funding. And then the entire layer of whose transition should I follow, should I focus on first, the market or the pastoralist? So how do you balance the two? And that's a general question. Of course, you can't just focus on one thing and leave the other. The head without the body or the body without the head doesn't work. But how do you balance, and especially how do you design something which focuses on both? So that's something, question to the large.
The purpose of the panel is actually to question some of our solutions. Are there any solutions or those solutions there? Yeah, I need you to answer the question. You cannot answer with your starting with the
Right. What I feel, what should be the priority for the civil society, because I am coming from the civil society area. But in detail, I want to respond to the last question जिन्होंने पूछा है और अंकित को कि we need to think, we should think in a agriculture landscape whole, how to improve agriculture landscape. How can we understand who are the partners in a one landscape? May the market players, may the producers, processors. In the morning, someone discussing about the transition financial arrangement. To many partners, those are the possible partners, can come together to build a coalition with developing a shared perspective. Shared perspective with integrating, connecting the all environmental, economic and social issues. But in morning, Honorable Mr. Tyagi, our farmer, also told the Pragati, social or economic. So how, for one agriculture landscape, we can build a partnership with the larger perspective too, where everyone can see the win-win situation. Right. This is not, I'm saying this is solution, but in NCNF Coalition for Natural Farming, I am interacting with many our partners, and many partners asking in the same manner difficult questions. And our earlier leadership and current leadership all thought out. So although this is challenging, because you need to build at least 10-year, 15-year perspective of aligning all partners with the one perspective. So वो जो भेड़ वाला है, सीप वाला है, उसका ऊन भी बिक जाए और ऊन कैसे होगा, वो भी इंश्योर हो कि कैसे क्वालिटी ऊन का प्रोडक्शन होगा, राइट? इसी तरह एग्रीकल्चर में भी what I was sharing experience that industry will also not lose, will face loss, and the producer and whoever the partners, possible partners, all can come together and invest. Most important thing is to invest for sustainability, right? So yeah, this is, I think, I am trying to give answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was a lot of great questions. Let me just sort of say a few quick things before passing on to Asmita. Suppose we were to think of a community like the Nayaka in the Nilgiri Hills, right? Now they have a specific imagination of the forest as a neighbor, and their relationships to the forest are the ones that they would share with a neighbor. Okay, now the Bega, which is a community that I have worked with a little bit, so has Venkat, so has Shomita and others, they don't really have an imagination of the forest as a neighbor. It's a different mode of relating to the forest. Now, these are not imagination or in the giving of forest rights or pattas, right? How can we make this imagination relevant and take it seriously? To me, a conversation on sustainability is incomplete if it can't even bring that question to the table. So that's just one thing I would like to say. The other thing, which I thought was a really good point, is that yes, as aspirations and desires move away from land into other futures and into other kind of roads, there is, I think, a very clear danger of using that as an argument to say that, okay, then you can dispossess people of land, right? And again, that's not a system. People should be allowed to have whatever aspirations and desires, whether it's to join a cricket academy, whether it's to stay and continue making your farms productive, without the threat of having your lands and your forests expropriated. So, where does that fit into our conversation on sustainability? I had something else to say, but now I forgot. Yeah, I thought that was also a really great question. So, that are we willing? Maybe agriculture is like not sustainable. Maybe the great agrarian transformation was like the first step in the road to a deeply unsustainable, climatically disastrous future. So I think we should also be not afraid to put that on the table. Right? So with communities like the Pega and other communities, the transition to making them sedentary agricultural community was definitely not the road to any kind of sustainability for them. So I think as long as they're not scared of intellectually scared of what questions we put on the table, then yeah.
I was just saying to Maya that if one knew the answers to all these questions, then that would be a wonderful place to be. I'm just going to take a whack at a few in some order in which they struck me, and trying to club a few of them together just to try and say how in the journey from being an economist to being, I don't know what I am right now, this discipline-wise, but also a field-based practitioner, some things that I think have struck me. So the question on structural transformation from sort of, rural and agrarian to industrial and urban as a way to lift people out of poverty, and I'd like to combine that perhaps with the question on land sparing and land sharing, and also the question on sustainability as a question of throughput. And I think we are probably, I think the panel can congratulate itself that if we've moved beyond just thinking about non-pesticide and fertilizer-based farming as something that will make the world a better place for all rural people, and if we are now sort of thinking about what is our imagination of a nicer, kinder world, and therefore not just sustainability but sustainability plus justice, if we are talking about that, already we've kind of moved a few steps towards the purpose of this panel in some sense. And I mean, there have been great thinkers who've engaged with these questions, right? So far be it from any of us to say what is the right path, but I would think that and also to our friend here who asked for what is the practice then, what are the pathways, अब क्या करें अगर ये सब problem है. So I can probably just speak from where I am at right now, and I think that where I am at is to think that there's some point at which in our sort of collective quest for modernization we began to associate scale with progress and well-being, and the bigger the better, the more the better kind of thing. So probably if you could just go back to what we were taught as a footnote in our development economics course, somebody like Schumacher saying small is beautiful, or talking about the economics of sufficiency rather than the economics of more. So if we are just just even going there, and being in the Central Indian tribal belt actually makes it easier to do something like that. So you put, I mean, whichever definition of how much energy is too much or too little, people in this room probably cannot be deciding that for the people in the Central Indian tribal belts. Just look at us and the throughput that we are kind of talking about right now. It's very easy कि वो हमें बता सकते हैं, शायद हम उनको नहीं बता सकते कि how much is too much or too little, etc. But yeah, human scale development, something that involves technologies that are sort of, you know, more touchable, feelable, imaginable, things that we can fix on our own human scale. I have no other word for it yet, but anything that goes beyond that scale. So then, for instance, the conundrum of can we make organic farming successful, last panel, but if we have to make it successful or sustainable, then we have to export our organic products. Now, the moment you do that, look at the footprint, look at the throughput, and while we are solving the problem of soil, we may not be solving the problem of energy and, you know, so on. So maybe just thinking about the scale, how much are we taking out and how much is being put back. So, I mean, so we're kind of touching at the degrowth kind of ways of thinking here, though I think that word is terribly misunderstood. Because the moment you say DN growth, it kind of triggers people, you want to keep us forever in poverty kind of a thing. So, in terms of how do we go about doing what we're doing or do something more towards a sustainable world, I don't know. I've understood that, you know, the first step is probably to understand our own power and positionality. Who are we to sit and discuss about their practice? So this we and them thing itself is coming from a position of privilege. And we need to kind of, need to kind of put that up front and also not be shy of engaging with the politics of this. The other is probably just, I've learned one thing that, you know, if you are able, and this is what Maya also said, if we are able to be challenged to let go of our most cherished beliefs, including what is sustainable, what is not, what do the Central Indian tribals want, what is their life word, you know, things like that. So somebody, and be comfortable with the fact that humans are very complex and conflicted creatures in and of ourselves. We want many impossible things. Hazaron ख्वाहिशें ऐसी, you know, गालिब कह रहे थे. So, you know, somebody that taught me everything that I currently know about the Kuno forests and felt this immense sense of loss at having to be displaced. One day told me that he's marrying his son into a village that's closer to town. And he said, मैं तो जंगल से निकल गया, उसको वहाँ कैसे वापस धकेल दूँ? And I'm like, you know, these are two such contradictory points of view residing comfortably in the same person. He wasn't puzzled, I was puzzled, and then I was not, because how many contradictory things do we do every day? Like so many, right? And so I think, yeah, if we're going to just these deeper questions of sustainability, I think our job is pretty much done. And that it leaves more questions than answers, yay.
I hope all of you are not very tired. Just I'll take two responses I'd like to give. After that, we can probably close. Yeah.
Be louder. Maybe
Yeah.
Maybe that mic is not really working.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I'll respond to two questions raised here. Sagar ne pucha tha about, you asked about the energy throughput. What is the level that you define in terms of defining sustainability? My response is to saying there's a question of justice involved, there's a question of politics involved. So the decision about sustainability is not a decision about, it's not a techno-managerial decision. It's a decision about politics. It's a power game. We all know that climate is changing and climate problems are happening, etc. But why is there so much debate in the world about what should be done about climate and why are there all the international negotiations happening, developing countries, developed countries, and the other way around. So these decisions are not taken. Peter rightly mentioned that the decision about what should happen in central India cannot be taken in this room. I would say what should be done in central India, what is the energy throughput in central India, that question cannot be answered in central India also. It has to be answered at the largest scale, because that is a very large question and it's not a question of one arriving at one figure. It's a question of politics. You have to fight for what is just and you have to provide everybody what they need. After that we can talk about sustainability, etc. Sustainability without justice doesn't make sense. There's a huge argument in favor of justice, which requires that we do not go into the definitions and look at the world in terms of information. And the second issue, what again Sagar mentioned, is about agriculture as an unsustainable transition. And if that is so, if that was so, what can we do? Can you rewind history and go back to the primitive period? You can't do that. So, but can we therefore not talk about sustainability? That is also not possible. If you say by definition agriculture is culture, it's not nature. Natural farming you are not good. Natural and farming are intrinsic contradiction. And natural cannot be farming. If you are doing something with nature, you cannot be doing farming. If you are doing farming, you cannot do nature. But ये सब semantic I think मेरा debates हैं. Basically ये point ये है कि agriculture अगर आया गलती से आया जो गलती आया इंसान ने गलती करी पूरा agriculture के रास्ते में गिर गया. We can't now rewind this. So you have to go with it. You have to deal with it. You have to find practical solutions. And if I don't have too much time to explain to your issue of structural transformations, the topic is very close to my heart. I can just go on discussing. The kind of transition which was mentioned in our economic model, Louis model for example, has not happened. It has not happened, definitely not happened in the Asian countries. And even now, agriculture, there is an overpopulation. There are more people than warranted by the share of agriculture in, let's say, the way we discussed. So what does that involve? Does it mean that we should neglect agriculture and move on with other sectors? I don't agree with that also. It's a very long discussion, so probably we can have it.